Hello and welcome to Gabbett Media. I'm Grant Abbott and welcome to my 400,000 subscriber special. So strap in? Strap in? Why are we strapping in? For the ride of your life? Oh yes. No. 400,000 subscribers special. Oh, this is a special one, isn't it? What the heck was that? Sit back and maybe kind of have a cup of tea with me or something. That's a very British thing to say, isn't it? A cup of tea. You're going to join me for a cup of tea, even though I haven't got a cup of tea myself. But you'll join me. 400,000 subscribers special. And I'm going to... No, you're not. You're not. You're going to sort this out and you're going to get it right. That's what's going to happen. It's always difficult to start off, isn't it? That's what it is. Channel and talking a bit about me. Hopefully you'll enjoy that and find it interesting. If not, you probably have clicked away from this video already. And bye. Goodbye. Why did you do that? Oh, man. Hello and welcome to Gabbett Media. I'm Grant Abbott and this is my 400,000 subscriber special. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to talk a bit about my channel, a bit about me and answer a few of your questions along the way. I've got all my notes up here, that's why I'm looking that way. And you can see I'm kind of got this relaxed environment where I've not set up any lights or anything. Actually, I have got one light on just to make sure that I'm lit up. But you're very much seeing the ordinary me. So let's start a bit about me and my interests. I'm primarily an artist, a sportsman, I suppose, as well. That's really important to me. I'm very much a happy, friendly person. So kind of what you're seeing now, I suppose, is me. I suppose I want to be friends with everybody. Sometimes that's a fault. But in terms of YouTube, I think it's a plus. Because everybody out there, I want to be your friend. Does that sound weird? I don't know. Maybe it does, but that's who I am. We'll just go with this. So obviously artist kind of comes first. It's my career, although it's kind of my hobby as well. And the sportsman aspect is really important to me. I play lots of sport, go to the gym all the time, and I try and eat really healthy. I would say that kind of influences my art in some way because I think it's really important to have a sort of steady head and a good diet will help you to be able to concentrate and really focus on things. That's my philosophy anyway. I'm not sure if it's as simple as that, but I think it really helps. In terms of my job, I would say these days I'm pretty much just a YouTuber and a content creator, so I create courses and YouTube videos. I don't take on hardly any freelance work anymore. I do look at freelance jobs that come in and think, would I like to do that? Might be a bit stressful. I'll just stick with what I'm doing because it's easier. I don't teach in college anymore. I used to be a teacher teaching games design in a college, but I gave that up. It was quite problematic, time consuming and frustrating in a lot of ways. So I'm all about creating content for YouTube, which I'm doing now, I suppose. And I suppose it has evolved a bit. I used to do kind of mini courses on YouTube and probably still will do a few of those. You've got to try and balance the entertainment value as well as the teaching value. And that's the marriage I'm trying to get at the moment with my channel. So a lot of the time I'm just doing something that I really enjoy doing and then talking about how I did it. And that's kind of how it's evolved. I think the kind of course content, which I will do bits and pieces of, but generally speaking, I prefer to do that as a course, which is paid for. I try and sell it as cheap as possible. And I work with Game Dev TV and we sell courses. Well, they sell courses really cheap. That's why I work with them. I think that's really great. Try and get that content out to the masses, but it is always better to do it as a course and get paid for it because you can put much more time into it. If you like what I do, then you can always buy my courses. They're in the description. I'll put a special bundle deal in there, which is all my 6 courses, I think, for only $55. I mean, that is stupidly cheap. Anyway, enough of the sell. So I asked for questions from my Discord group and the YouTube channel. Discord group, links in the description if you want to go and join that. I'm not particularly active on there. I do respond to questions I get because as always I want to be everybody's friend, so I'm always trying to respond to as many questions as possible or point you in the right direction, so you can try and chat to me on there if you want to. I don't have much time for chatting though, unfortunately. It's a bit of a shame. But I asked for questions on there, and one that came back quite commonly was what motivates and inspires me. Of course, great art, great games and stuff inspires me loads to try and recreate that. The main thing, weirdly, and it's not meant to sound sort of, I don't know, it sounds a bit weird, but the main thing that motivates me is actually the audience, so you guys out there, because for some, I suppose we all have that want to be wanted, want to be needed, and I feel like my teaching is needed by many people, so I feel happy about that, and people who enjoy my art, I feel happy about that. So that's my biggest inspiration is, I suppose it is kind of hunting for views, but in a sense that is some sort of validation about my work. So does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense anyway. And then the other question that comes from that is, well, what sort of tips do you have for motivation and so forth? Well, getting feedback on your work and getting positive reactions from your work is really motivating. So try and get your work out there as much as you can. It's hard to start off with, especially if you're a beginner, because your work isn't that great and you kind of know it, but you're proud of it still. You put lots of hours into it, but you keep going with that. You've got to kind of get through that stage, get on to the sort of bit where you're more an intermediate and people are starting to get an interest in your work. And it's a really exciting process when those views or your view count kind of goes up, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, or whatever it might be. When you start getting more likes and stuff, then you feel like, oh, people are enjoying my work, and that's really inspiring. However, it's not all about chasing likes. I'm not suggesting it is, but it really does help. So maybe give a like to more people as well. That will encourage them. Another question that really interested me was someone said, how are you? And I thought, is this a question for now, or do you want me to answer that on this YouTube video? And they said, yeah, just how are you? And I thought, actually, that's an interesting question. I'm really happy. I'm really pleased with my life and how it is. I really enjoy life. I live life to the full. I'm living the dream, you could say, because I get to be an artist as much as I want to be. And I get paid for it, in a sense, through a bit of YouTube advertising. It's not that great, but there is a bit there. It's good enough. Making courses, and I enjoy making courses. I enjoy the art. I think there's an art to making art accessible, and I think that's my skill. And I really enjoy it when someone reviews my course and says, "Oh, I found this really easy to follow." I've been struggling to get into Blender, and those comments about my teaching is really inspiring to me and keeps me going, and I really enjoy it. I love the fact that I can reach lots of people and help them with their journey to having something that I've got, which is a great life, being able to produce art for a living. And what's the saying? I even looked this up. It's find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's what I've got. I'm really lucky, thanks to everybody out there and people that support me, buy my courses and so forth, because I am able to do a job that I love, and I really don't feel like I'm working anymore. I feel like I'm retired from teaching, but even though I'm teaching, but it feels like I'm living the dream, definitely. It's wonderful. So how am I? I'm really great. Thank you very much for asking. Another question, are you still teaching? Well, no, I'm not, but I kind of am in this sense, but not teaching in school. And what's your best memory of doing so? I've got loads of fond memories, and pretty much every time I'm in the classroom was a really fond memory. I left teaching because of all the red tape and as in, we call that red tape in Britain, but those things that don't really influence your teaching, but you have to do them. So you have to be observed by someone, and they have to judge your teaching ability. And also, you have students in your class who don't really want to be there. And that's a difficult thing for me because I want to be everybody's friend. It's a bit weird, really. But I do. In terms of my students, I want to get to know my students and be someone who is their friend and helpful to them. That was really important to me. So if they didn't want to be there, that was always quite difficult. And I'd feel bad trying to force them to do that work. So that's why I don't miss education in that sense. And in terms of education as a whole, I think there's a big problem with it in the sense that we stick kids in these chairs, force them to learn instead of being creative and running around, having fun. And it's quite upsetting to me that they can't do what they want to do. And we encourage them to conform, and that really annoyed me. So that's why I left education and gone into YouTube's wonderful because you get people there who want to be there. They've clicked on your video because they're interested, and that's so much more effective as an educational tool, in my opinion, anyway. Next question, did you actually mean to choose 3D modeling as your career? Yes, I definitely did. I've always wanted to be a 3D modeler ever since I saw the magazine 3D World. which was in W.H. Smith's, and you could go in and you could kind of read the magazines in there, which was lovely. So I'd just go in all the time and read that magazine, look at the images that people created. In fact, before that, I wanted to be an artist and really into Warhammer fantasy armies and the fantasy battle, orcs and goblins and elves and so forth. Tried to draw them, was really rubbish at it, but always wanted to do that. And 3D modeling as a career was a way that I could actually do that and get paid for it. I know you can obviously paint and be paid for it as well, but the opportunities were so much thinner. But in terms of 3D modeling, I could see that this was a career that was going to grow and only become bigger. And I could see lots of jobs in the job section at the back of the paper. And I thought, oh, do you know, I can actually do this as a job. This would be my dream career. And it took me a long time to get here. And I'm not really where I thought I would be, but I am here in this wonderful position. Another question, if you could go back in the past, how would you relearn Blender? Well, when I first started Blender, YouTube wasn't a thing. And I think YouTube has made it so much easier to learn Blender. The only thing I certainly would do differently, I wouldn't just look at YouTube channels. I'd make more effort to buy courses because of that methodical approach. I'm not trying to say buy my courses. I'm just saying it's so much easier. Not everybody can afford to buy courses. So go onto YouTube channels where they have a methodical approach and you can kind of see where to start. And don't try and run before you can walk is a classic, but there's so many people that I want to know how to do a character. It's very hard to do a character, so learn low poly modeling first. Always learn low poly modeling. It's the best way in. It's the easiest thing to do, and it's quite enriching and rewarding because you can get used to the program at the same time as producing some fun art. So do low poly stuff. That's what I will always say to people. But yes, buy a few courses. I think that's important because you will have a methodical approach to learning, which is better than just sort of jumping around different places. What's your biggest regret in your career? I think it's probably staying in teaching too long. It was very stressful, especially when I was full-time, and I should have gone part-time a lot earlier because I still value my teaching experience. It's very important to what I do now, and I think it's really helpful to people. But it wasn't necessary for me to stay in that job as long as I did. And I kind of clung on to it, not knowing how else to get out. And it was very difficult as well to see how to become a 3D artist, especially as I kind of didn't do that as a degree, and I only had sort of very hobbyist understanding of 3D and the industry. So it took a long time for me to develop the skills alongside teaching, and I should have just gone part-time earlier and taken a cut in wages and practiced my 3D alongside much sooner. But I don't really have any big regrets because, like I say, I'm very happy to be where I am now. Any tips for people who make tutorials themselves? Yes, I think actually making tutorials isn't for everyone. And I think there are some people out there, and I'm not saying this to be negative, but they see YouTube as an opportunity to make a living, which it is. But there's only a few of us who are lucky enough to get there. You're better off looking for sort of freelance work and maybe do tutorials on the side, see if it's something that you're good at, because it's not easy. I know I'm not trying to put people off, but you have to think about the audience more than you think about yourself. Not, I think this is really cool, I'm going to create this, and the audience is just going to come along with me. You've got to think, what is the best thing for that student to learn at their point in their learning? So that might be something that doesn't look as good and as cool as you might think, but it's something that they need to learn. And that doesn't actually make for great entertaining YouTube videos, unfortunately. So you probably won't get as many views as you kind of want to get. So you're always fighting against teaching and entertaining. And to find that balance is very difficult. So you've got to try and find things that are easy to make, that are entertaining, and that teach in a good, methodical way. So it's tough to find that balance. But if you feel you can do that, then go for it. But it's very time consuming to do that, and it's not always as fun as it might seem. So you may not want to go into the tutorial making. It's not as glamorous as it might seem. Is this glamorous? I don't know. I'm very glamorous. But generally, those three things: try and entertain, try and be methodical about your teaching, and focus on the audience. I'm not sure they were the same three things that I said earlier, but those three things are good things to go for. What are your plans for the future? Well, I always have this plan, which is to be the best, absolute, most amazing artist I can possibly be. It really is that simple for me. And doing the YouTube and the teaching, I feel like that's just part of it, and it's always going to be part of it. And the better I get, the better I'll be able to teach people. So I just keep going and going and going, trying to get better and better and better, and take it in that direction, trying to teach the best I can. That's my plan for the future. And whatever direction that takes me in, that's sort of the direction I'll go in. How long did it take from the very beginning to get into the industry? It's a bit of a strange one because I've always been on the periphery, in a sense, of the industry, and I've obviously done freelance projects for individuals and people making games and stuff, but I've only worked for a fully fledged game studio that employs more than like 5 people. I've only worked for them once. Well, I say once. I've worked for one of those, I should say. I worked for them for quite a few freelance projects, but I've only worked for that company. So in a sense, going from the beginning where I wanted to be a 3D artist, right when I was much younger, to becoming a 3D artist was about 15 to maybe, was it 20 years? So I think I'm a bit unusual in that sense. It's much easier now because when I first went to university, I did a degree in media studies. If there had been 3D modeling, I would have definitely have chosen that. But you could not, in fact, there wasn't a degree in that when I went to university. So we didn't have that option, but I would have done it, and I would have much rather have gone that route. Was Blender your first choice of software? If not, why did you change? No, it wasn't my first choice of software. I started with Maya. It was a naughty version of Maya. I admit that. And I was just using it to learn and create content for a portfolio. I wasn't selling anything, even though that's still naughty to do that. There wasn't really any option for students like me to afford such programs. It was very difficult to get into the industry. Blender wasn't really an option back then, although it was. And I looked at this software and thought, Blender's free, but Maya is so much easier to learn, and it's industry standard. I've got to learn that. I did change my mind after a while because it just didn't sit right that I was learning this software. I didn't feel comfortable doing any freelance projects with a piece of software that was not legitimate. So I went across to Blender. But Blender did not make it easy. Right-click to select was... I'm sure there's purists out there who are going to hate me for saying this, but what a silly idea. When every other program is choosing left-click to select, you go for right-click. It's just, come on. But also, at the time, it wasn't as good as Maya, I'm afraid to say. I found it so much easier in Maya to do things, but Blender, doing the same things was very, very tough. And back then, there was things like a sculpt mode in Maya. There wasn't in Blender and so forth. So it got better and quite quickly as well. So that was a good thing. But and I took a big break as well and then came back to it. And then when I came back to it, I was thinking, actually, this is something that can work. And we can go forward with this. But Blender didn't make it easy. However, if I was starting now, I would suggest to people choosing Blender. It's free. It's becoming more and more industry standard. It isn't yet, but the skills you learn in Blender are easily transferable. It wouldn't take you long to sort of pick up Maya. And as long as you are really good at as an artist and a creator, you can jump between programs. It's not too bad these days, especially as they made it left click finally. This is an interesting question. Do you sometimes warm up with Blender exercises before you dive into modeling? No, I don't. I can understand people doing that, but I don't really find it necessary. I find it more necessary if I'm drawing something, but I tend to, if I'm drawing something, I'll just do a layer and then I'll use that as a guide and then carry on with a better layer afterwards. But with Blender, you can just pull things around and change it around, or just delete it and start again, and that was your warm-up. I don't feel the need to really do warm-up exercises, and actually for me it just kind of slows me down, but I can understand people doing that if that's your thing. And I suppose what I'm saying by that is you don't have to always listen to these people who say, oh, you must warm up and you must do this first. It's up to you what you want to do. Don't discount what they're saying because it might work for you. But if it's not working for you, don't try and stick to it and keep going with it if it's not working. Another question similar to that is, how do you stay consistent with your practice? Well, the truth is I don't, I'm afraid. Some days it's just like that. You can't fit in your practice or your routines. I suppose that my answer would be make a plan and a routine. Make practice easy, so it's easy to pick up a pen and paper or pencil and pad or something if you're practicing your art, for example. Make it easily accessible so it's there, so you don't have to go and sharpen your pencils and find your rubbers, erasers. We call them rubbers in England, and so on. Just make the process easy. I've got an iPad and I use, what is the sculpting program called? The sculpting program on there, and that's how I practice my sculpting in the evening if I'm watching TV. It's not the best way to practice, watching TV at the same time, but it at least is practice, and I think that's kind of important. So try and work it into your routine. But don't get annoyed at yourself if you don't do it. Just pick up the next day and think, we'll get back on that practice, and try and do it the next day and the next day. And if you miss a few days, you go back to it. You're still, let's say you do 2 a week, you still practice twice in that week. You could have been better, you could have done better, but it's better than just giving up. That's the important thing. So make practice easy, make a plan and a routine, and don't get annoyed at yourself if you don't do it. Just carry on the next day and get back onto the routine. I've got lots of questions about how do we market ourselves as artists. The main thing is just to get out there, and it doesn't matter about your platform. Is ArtStation the best? Is Instagram the best? Just get out there, get your art out there as much as you can. It helps to get a bit of feedback, helps to get some likes. It boosts you, it makes you feel better. If you're not getting many likes, don't worry. You just keep going and you keep plodding along, and you'll get more. It is a slow curve up, like the curve. That's a straight line. It's a slow line going up. The better you get, the more likes you'll get, and it makes you feel good. And you just sort of keep getting better. But you just keep plodding away and posting your work. And even if it's just, your mum saying, oh, I like what you've done there, and if she can use that, mine can hardly use a phone to press like, but that sort of thing. Family and friends it will start with, and they'll like your work just to be positive, but that's nice. And then after that, when you get some people who are saying, oh, nice work, and they're random people, that's really quite special because they actually do like it, and then you can sort of move on from there. But anyway, just get out there as much as you can. That's important. Now, this to me was a really interesting question. It's someone saying, should I change my mindset to reach as many people who are interested in my work as possible? This is fascinating to me because someone else responded saying, you should never have to change who you are just for someone else. And whilst I agree with them, and I get their sentiment, it's worth saying that. You don't feel like you have to change your personality to meet other people's expectations. However, there are more employable personalities than other personalities. And it's tough to say, and I don't know anybody's personal situation, but some people will label themselves as, well, I'm an introvert, so I don't get out there. And I think you are limiting yourself as soon as you give yourself that label. And an introvert, I've got nothing against introverts. I suppose I'm probably an extrovert, so it's easier for me to say. But I still struggle with things like public speaking, and I will avoid public speaking opportunities. But by avoiding them, I am avoiding opportunities. So is that something that I need to work on and get over? Having an introverted personality is absolutely fine. So you're better off one-to-one with people. That's a good thing. You're not so good in crowds, but perhaps avoiding crowds isn't the answer. It just means you won't be so good with crowds. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go. If you hopefully, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to people who are more introverted inclined, but just be careful of giving yourself that label and limiting yourself. Always work on yourself, work on your weaknesses, what you might see as a weakness. And for people who are introverted, then social occasions, bigger social occasions, might be tough. But that doesn't mean you don't go to them, because there's opportunities there. So you shouldn't have to change who you are, but be aware of those limitations and perhaps work on them and don't avoid them, is my advice there. And I do understand what that person was saying about you shouldn't have to change for anybody. I do agree to a certain aspect, but some things, so let's say I was a really grumpy, annoying person, I would probably need to change if I wanted to get a job. So I would have to work on my grumpy annoyedness, whatever that is. Hopefully, that's not disrespectful to anybody, and you can understand my point of view in this one. So don't feel you have to change, but yes, an important aspect of being an artist is getting your work seen, and therefore avoiding that interaction on social media is probably not a good thing. Getting out there is important. Hopefully that helps. It's a difficult one though, and I'm probably not the best person to answer it because I'm a bit more extroverted, if I can give myself that label. What was your breakout model, the 3D model that put you on the map as a 3D professional? I did a low poly model in a lesson once. I was saying, oh, we can do this low poly and maybe this. And then I kept working on it, which is a bit naughty really, because I should have been teaching at that point. And then I just kept going and the students were getting on. And I thought, oh, do you know, then I could tinker this way. And I created this really nice scene. And you just think, oh, that's wonderful, that is. And I was so pleased with it. And it got me noticed a little bit. And that was a really good start. And getting noticed is it's a major thing for an artist, isn't it? It shouldn't be the be-all and end-all, but it really does feel good when people start noticing your artwork and they got lots of likes and attention from different places. It does make a difference to produce a piece and know it worked. And it's probably my most successful piece, really. I think it got me the most interest. But it was one of my earliest pieces of work, which is the strange thing about that. And it was a low poly model. So it goes to show you can not have that much experience in 3D, but still do well with low poly work and produce some really nice stuff. How did you start your journey and what kept you going at the start? When I first started my journey, I was in between jobs and I thought I'm really going to go for it with 3D modeling. And I think it was 3D Buzz that I looked at, and I sort of followed one of his courses and just really, really worked hard solidly throughout the day, just stopping for lunch and tea and stuff. And it was that sort of binge of learning that was really important to start me off and jumpstart me into the career. I'm not saying you have to do, and it may be very different for you, you may have a sort of ploddy approach, but for me, having a good chunk of solid learning, and then you've got a sort of base you can jump to your own projects and go in your own direction from. They continue their question by asking, how do you continue to teach yourself? And I still take courses now. I still look at lots of YouTube videos from other artists, especially when they've done something really interesting. I think, oh, how did they go about doing that? And then maybe adapt it and do my own thing with it. And that's how we grow together as a community. I find that aspect really exciting. So still loads for me to learn. I really wouldn't say I'm an expert. It's quite strange when people think I'm like this amazing Blender person, when I feel like I'm just scratching the surface on what can be done. It's just, there's so much to be done, so much to learn. There's loads for me to learn, and I keep going. I did say to myself, I'll do a tutorial each day, but some days are good days, some days aren't so good. But I try and learn a little bit each day, especially when I'm doing a big project and I think, how do I do that? Well, I'll find out the best way to do it, and then go back to the project sort of thing. So keep learning all the time. How do I find clients? Well, when I was freelancing, it was one of the most difficult things, but eventually clients came to me because of my YouTube channel. So I'm a bit unusual in that sense. I probably can't really advise people in that regard, but your portfolio is the most important thing. So having a portfolio, getting it out there, people noticing you will help you massively. Apart from that, I went out to look for jobs. That was the hardest thing. And I know lots of people are in that situation. Keep trying, keep working at it, keep getting yourself out there, and hopefully those jobs will come in. But it's really, really tough. Those first steps onto the 3D career are the hardest by a long way. So keep going with it, and hopefully you'll get there eventually. Keep practicing, because that's the most important thing. I always said that if you just become really, really good at what you do, then people will come to you. And generally speaking, that does, it will make a difference. The better you are, the more likely you are of getting the job. So keep practicing, keep trying and persevering, and hopefully you'll get there. What, if any, have been your lowest moments, and how have you pushed past that to ultimately succeed? Well, I remember one of the first freelance jobs I took on, it was beyond me, and I thought I could do it. And I worked very hard on it, and it just wasn't very good. I sent the product off, or part of the product, knowing that it just wasn't great. And I thought I could do better, but I was trying really hard. I just wasn't getting there. I just didn't have the skills to produce what they wanted. And they were okay about it. They were a bit disappointed with the work, and I said, "Do you know, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I'm at that skill level." It was roughly that conversation over sort of a lot of conversations, and I agreed to kind of give up on the project. And I didn't take any money for it because I just didn't feel like I could, because I didn't produce the quality of work that they wanted. And that was really tough. But it was an experience. It was a chance to figure out my level, what I could go for, what I couldn't, what went wrong, and just analyze it. Those failures end up being successes, really, because the failure, the best teacher there is, according to Yoda and many others. What tips would you give anyone out there who's struggling with a project or feeling doubt over their work? Get feedback from other people. How is this going? What do you think? Or if there's a project that they're doing for someone else, get feedback from that person and be in constant communication with them, making sure they're happy with the work. And if they aren't, they'll tell you, and then that will give you somewhere else, a different direction to go in. And that sort of feedback, sometimes you don't always have to listen to that feedback, because some people are just overly critical, but it's helpful. And it's a struggle, though, because you feel like you are being judged because this is your lovely project and someone's judging you, but that's really important. And the best artists are the ones who can take that feedback and move on from it. What's been my highest moment, and how have you remained humble? That's an interesting one. My highest moment, probably getting asked by a game company to freelance for them and do some work for Atlas Empires, that was, and I was doing some hand-painted objects for their game. And it's wonderful to be involved in a project and have people play that game, and you can see your models in that game. That was a really high point. In terms of remaining humble, that's not difficult, because I don't feel that I'm that great. I don't feel like I'm at the top of the artist pool. I feel like I'm way at the bottom, to be honest. You just see some artists out there and you think, wow, that is incredible. Am I ever going to be in that place? So being humble is not difficult when you're at my skill level. Honestly, it isn't. It's funny because as an audience, you just see my best bits most of the time. I suppose you see this, which is me being more natural. But generally speaking, you see all the good bits, and you think that that's me all the time. But to get to there was all these failed attempts. So take that into account when you're looking at me and my art. And also, perhaps I attract more beginners because of my teaching style, and therefore most of you out there as an audience are at that beginner level. So you look at me, who's slightly above that beginner level, and you think, wow, I hope to be that good one day. Whereas I'm thinking, look at that level, which is way up there. So it's very easy for me to remain humble. They go on to say, have you ever fallen victim to feeling superior to others around you, and how did you overcome this? No, I haven't fallen victim to that. I don't feel superior. In fact, that's an important part of my personality and who I am. I desperately try not to be judgmental of anybody, no matter how different they are to me and how much I might think, oh, that's just not right. Don't judge a person until you've walked in their shoes, is the mile in their shoes, or whatever the phrase is. And that's really important to me, to try and understand people rather than to judge them. So I never feel superior to anybody, I wouldn't say. Apart from in sport, when I beat someone really good, and then I'm the best. No, I don't. It's important to me. Teamwork is essential to me, and bringing people up. That's who I am as a teacher, as a friend. That's the most important thing in life to me. So feeling superior to someone just doesn't really fit to that, because if I feel like I am better at something than them, I will want to teach them, to bring them up to my level so we can work together and produce some cool stuff together. That's who I am. So I don't think I have those superiority complexes. I've had a few questions about should I be pursuing a career in the 3D industry, and what do you think the future is, and what about AI? That's probably a separate question, but generally speaking, are you concerned is a big question. Yes, I am. I'm concerned for my job. I'm concerned for lots of people's job in the industry, because you can kind of see where it's going. When you can ask a computer, make a low poly orc, let's say, and it produces an orc better than you can, or better, or as good as a professional, then there's lots of artists who are in trouble, in a sense. What's important then is to go with the flow, because although at some point it will come to this, but I think creativity is harder for AI still to produce. It's going to be harder. So can I take the orc that the AI creates and make a game out of it? Can I be more creative than the AI in terms of what I know the audience wants, and get the best game I can that comes from me? So use the AI, work in conjunction with it, work on your creativity, work on your ideas. That's just as important these days as the technical skills, which I think are becoming less and less important. Maybe even the artistic skills will become less and less important eventually. But you still need things like observation skills, which are important. So if I say, computer, make an orc, and it makes a brilliant looking orc, but I want to change the style, what's going to be really creative? Give the orc a big head and big hands, make it more cute, and then we're going to have orcs running after, I don't know, giant fruits. So we'll have a really fluffy peach or something, and you know, that sort of weird creativity is and observation as to what's cute, what's fun, what do people like. That's as important. So working with it is going to be important in the future. But yes, I'm fearful of people's jobs. And we can kind of see computers taking people's jobs at the moment already. So there is validity to that fear, and I can understand it. On the flip side of that, someone asked, what's my opinion on the metaverse, and is that going to be huge one day? Are there going to be more opportunities? And I think definitely yes. AI isn't there yet. There's definitely this sort of window, and there'll be opportunities to work with AI. So there's still a lot out there. The metaverse is going to be important. I hate calling it the metaverse, actually, but 3D immersive worlds are the future, in my opinion. Yes, people who put headsets on might get a bit sick at the moment, but that will only become a thing of the past. It's going to be essential, I think, and we as 3D artists are in a great position right now to make the most of that and be really creative and create some fun, exciting things in that world. So I'm very excited about it, and I think it is the future. I always said to myself, when I watched Star Trek as a kid, and there was the holodeck, this was Next Generation, not the original Star Trek, they didn't have the holodeck then, but Next Generation, and they go into the holodeck, that's the ultimate in entertainment. So yes, that's kind of what the 3D world is trying to produce, is this sort of completely immersive world. How wonderful it would be to game, interact, and so forth within that world. So yes, I see that the potential of that is so vast that it is undoubtedly the future, in my opinion. So I'm very excited about it, and I want to be a part of that. And I want other people to be a part of that as well. I think it's going to be great. We're going to produce some wonderful things together. Now, two things to finish off. One question, what made you decide to upload? And what can I as an individual do to help your channel, aside from financial support or subscribing and liking? Well, that's the obvious, is subscribe and like. Really appreciate that. Share as well is really useful. There's someone called Chris Foggy who on Facebook is always saying in these groups, try Grant Abbott, his videos are great. I'm always really thankful of people like that who spread the word about me. Much appreciated. Buying a course is great, but don't feel you have to if you can't afford it. There's loads of playlists on my channel to support you there as well. Hopefully that helps, and I appreciate all the support, definitely. One last thing, I did promise that I would, because I've stopped doing sort of the monthly competition, but there is a competition server that kind of broke away from mine to do just the competitions. Blender Bender, I think they call themselves. If you go onto my Discord, I'll put an extra announcement on there about going across to that if you want to join in competitions and want to join in the community more, learn more and so forth. Jump across to there. I promised them I would say a shout out to them. And I appreciate them taking that on from me because I think it's an important thing to help people to learn. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this. For those that are still with me, I'm very impressed that you lasted this long. So give me a sort of I'm still with you, Grant. I love hearing that. For some reason, I feel a connection to those people. So if you put that in, then there's a special bond between us. It sounds silly, but I think you know what I mean. And like I say, I kind of want to be friends with everybody. I can't because most people are miles away, but it just sort of makes me feel connected in some way. So say I'm still with you, Grant. Love it, and I'll give you a big thumbs up, as I always do. Thank you very much to everybody for your support. It's another milestone. Hopefully there's many more milestones to go, and hopefully you'll join me on that journey. And as always, comment below with any extra questions you have. I'll try and answer those if I can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.